Today, we are going to learn what dye deterioration is on a coin and what it looks like and how it happens at the mint. You're going to want to pay attention to this because you are going to learn something from this video. Dye deterioration. Absolutely nobody on a Facebook page, when they post a coin, wants to have somebody come in and say, that's what you've got. But believe it or not, a lot of what people find on coins that they suspect might be an error of some sort is actually dye deterioration. So, what is it? What does it look like? Does it have any value? How do you spot it? And foremost, I guess, more than anything else, really, what causes it? Let's find out, shall we? When most coin collectors, at least experienced coin collectors, think of dye deterioration on a, let's say, Lincoln cent, for example, and since I deal mainly with Lincoln cents, that's a majority of what you're going to see in this video are Lincoln cents. But remember, the dye deterioration factor, if you want to call it such, applies to all denominations because it happens to every single coin out there. Even proof coins can have dye deterioration. It's not as likely, but it happens, and you can definitely see it on certain years of proof coins. So, back to what I was saying. When dye deterioration is first thought of from an experienced coin collector standpoint, the number one coin that they almost always think of is the 1955 Lincoln cent. Now, you might actually remember that there's a very, very popular doubled die in 1955 for the Lincoln cent. And that is not dye deterioration. However, we're going to show you something that most people think is actually a doubled die. Here you go. This is a 1955 Lincoln cent with dye deterioration. Now, take a really close look at it because in a second I'm going to show you this exact same image to a certain degree with a couple of circled areas. Now take a look at the second five and you will notice that it's starting to disappear as it moves towards the rim of the coin. Now, also take a look in this picture and you will notice down along the rim of the coin below the date, there's another secondary ridge that's there. We're going to explain exactly what causes that. But here's the other picture of that 1955, and this is what people call a poor man's doubled die. Problem is, it's not actually a double die. It's dye deterioration, but because so many people want to own a 1955 double die, that some bright, brilliant person at one particular point in time came up with the idea to convince everybody that the dye deterioration that you see on 1955 cents is actually a poor version of a doubled die, and it is not anywhere close. Here's the actual 1955 doubled die, and you can actually see as I put the two on the screen together, they look nothing alike. Remember that extra line that was below the date on the 1955 cent? You know, this one here? Well, that's what's known as a ridge line. And believe it or not, it's the same kind of a thing as a ridge line out in a field someplace like this. And it pretty much denotes a fall off or a plateau, or if you want to call it a ridge around a certain area or along a certain area. In this particular instance, that ridge line is created by the die because the die has started to flatten out. All right. So we're going to talk about this ridge line and we're going to talk about what creates it next. I'm out at my relatively messy workbench because really I don't have time to clean it because I'm always looking at coins and making coin videos. And this is basically how I'm going to demonstrate what happens to a die as it ages. So this hammer is kind of new, but it's used a little bit. And this is essentially the other side of the die or the other side of the coin. This is what we're going to basically call the obverse die, which is the hammer die. And this is what we're going to call the reverse die or the anvil die. Now, the anvil die does not move, it stays flat and stationary. The hammer die, on the other hand, is basically just like this hammer. It comes down and hits the anvil die over and over and over again in the exact same spot. All right? So when that happens, there's a lot of pressure that is exerted. And when that pressure is exerted, essentially what winds up happening over and over again is the die starts to flatten out. Everybody knows what happens when you hit something too many times with a hammer. I mean, think about it. You hit a nail too many times, what do? You flatten it out. Well, a die is basically just like a hammer, and if you hit it too many times into the other die, or you hit it too many times into the blank planchets, guess what happens? The die flattens out just like this. So, this right here is essentially what happens to a die as it is struck too many times, whether it be the obverse die or the reverse die. The two dies coming together when they strike each other without a planchet in between creates what's called anybody? Anybody? No? Okay. It creates what's basically called a die clash. The two dies clash together. But when it strikes an actual blank planchet, there's something in between them. And as it strikes that, it's basically squeezing the metal outwards on that blank planchet to create and fill the voids of those dies, thereby creating the coin. By doing that over and over again in high speed succession, just like this, which is an actual die press being used, that super speed that you're seeing there means that the dies have to be extremely hard. But as they weaken, they start to flatten out. Now, if you look real close at this, and I hold it up to the camera in between my bridge of my nose right there, you can actually see a little ridge right here on this piece of metal. That ridge all the way around is the flattened piece of metal that is exactly like what happens to a die. And when that die actually flattens out, and that little bit of flattened ridge that you see there actually forms on the die, so to speak, the metal that is flowing outward from the center of the coin stops where that little ridge actually is on that die. Now, it doesn't mean that there isn't metal that pushes beyond that ridge and forms the rim of the coin. It just means that there's a small bit of it that hangs up right there by the rim. So, what we're going to do is take a look at some of those. What you're seeing on the screen in front of you are some phenomenal examples of ridge lines that are created by that flattened die. Now, when that die flattens out, it's because it's been used so much that it's pretty much getting ready to call it quits. And as you're about to see in the next pictures, once that starts to happen, other things happen along with that ridge line that's created. One of those things that happens are die cracks. Take a look at these two examples right here of die cracks that have formed on Lincoln's head as a result of this dye being overused to the point at which it not only created ridge lines, but it also created some pretty heavy duty cracked skulls as well. And dye deterioration can cause the devices around the rim of a coin to actually blur outwards towards that rim. This is not a mint error. The L on the rim of a coin is not a mint error. Now that you've seen this video, you now know what causes that. It is simply just dye deterioration. Just like in this example here, it literally looks like the L has been melded into the rim of the coin. That is not a mint error. So, just to summarize really quickly so that everybody gets the gist of this whole video, dye deterioration is just that, dye deterioration. It is the deteriorating of the dye as the dye is being used. It has zero value or adds zero value to a coin because it is not considered a mint error. It is actually just an overused die. So please do not assume that anything that deals with die deterioration will add any value to your coin whatsoever. In most cases, it actually detracts from the value of it. Even if you have a very nice clean coin, a deteriorated die means a weak strike, and a weak struck coin will definitely not grade the same as a well struck coin. As you guys can see, it is now getting dark outside. It is dark in here. That means I have taken my time to make this video over several hours, trying really hard to make sure that I show you exactly what causes some of those anomalies that you see on your coins. I do really appreciate everybody watching for these 11 or 12 minutes that this video is. Hopefully you guys have learned something. If you have, I really, really would appreciate it if you would hit the like button, because the YouTube channel gurus actually like to see people hit that like button. Remember to subscribe to the channel, keep the notification bells on so that you get more updates when more videos become available. I do apologize that I have not made a whole bunch of videos lately, but in the past couple of days, I do want to definitely let you guys know I became a grandpa for the very first time. I am extremely excited about that and very, very happy to welcome my new grandchild to our family. So, thank you very much for watching. You guys have a very good evening. Good night.